Hello and welcome to the FSU versus Miami edition of the Osceola's Seminole Sidelines. My name is Pat Burnham, and I will be joined tonight by former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. Mark, there was a Seminole wind blowing on Saturday night in South Beach, and it devastated Miami and Hard Rock Stadium as FSU destroys the Hurricanes 45-3 to secure their sixth win of the season, which makes them bowl eligible for the first time since 2019. And it was a game Mark, really, that Florida State was in control of from the from the start, really. But at the end of the end of the first quarter, Florida State was totally in control and never looked back. Just your general thoughts on the game itself before we dive into the offense, defense, and special teams contributions. But a complete game.
Yeah, going in, we knew they were struggling. We knew they had issues up front. We knew that offensively, we knew they had issues with the quarterback and who was going to play and all that. And we seemed to be kind of getting it together after the open week with a great game against Georgia Tech. So going into the game, you kind of thought in the back of your mind, you didn't want to say it out loud almost, but you almost thought that this could happen. You almost thought that if we played our best, that FSU could really put one over on Miami. And it turned out to be better than we could have hoped in terms of a Seminole win, the control of the game from the outset, the domination on both sides of the line of scrimmage. And of course they have their own issues, and I'm not going to apologize for that. But so just a great night to be a Seminole.
Yeah, I think FSU scored on 7 of 12 possessions. Miami was held at 3 plays or less on 7 of their 11 offensive possessions. It was certainly a game where special teams contributed. We'll get into a little bit of that. Both Alex Mastromano and Ryan Fitzpatrick had good nights. Listen, Mark, this team is now 6-3 bowl eligible. We'll talk about the bowl situation as we move forward here. But listen, with Syracuse, we'll talk a little bit about them down the road, but with Syracuse, Louisiana, and Florida left on their schedule, Florida State looks to be as healthy as it's been all season. Is it peaking at the right time after this game in which they made Miami look more like Duquesne than the real Canes? Is this team coming together at the right time?
Coming together at the right time, yes. I wouldn't use the term peaking because I think that has a connotation that you're kind of at a peak and then it's kind of downhill. I don't think it's that at all. I think it's just the play has just been elevated. This team is continuing to grow, and it seems like in the last 2 weeks, the light has come on. And as a coach and as a fan, you hope that for your players, you see potential in a player or players, and you just hope you just keep working, and you hope at some point the light comes on and they get it right. And when that happens, it's a beauty. It's a thing to behold. It's something that once you cross that bridge, once that light comes on, it's the growth happens now exponentially as you get better. And I think that's kind of what we're seeing. I think we're seeing the culmination of 3 years of really hard work by the coaching staff and the players, instituting a culture, setting standards for performance, and it's really helped that we've had 2 weaker opponents on our schedule at this point as we're getting healthy. And I think, because you can't really discount that. But right. I'll tell you a great example of that. The other thing is that we're playing smarter. We're playing smart winning football. And I wrote down an example of this because it really stuck out to me. If you remember, in the past, we get really overly emotional in these rivalry games in the last couple of years. And, we make stupid mistakes, late hits out of bounds, pushing back, all that little chippy stuff that happens in rivalry games. Well, these guys really came out with a purpose. And I like what Coach Norvell said at his press conference, that the attitude in the locker room, the attitude during practice, and the attitude pregame was such that, they came to do a job. And a great example of that was, I remember Dimitri Manuel absolutely wrecked their defensive tackle Taylor, right? Who pregame they were hyping him as the next, Warren Sapp or Vince Wilfork or something. He ain't that, right? And Emmanuel was owning him. And at the end of the play, the guy pushed back and got chippy, and Emmanuel was just like, dude, I just wrecked you. I'm walking away. I'm not going to engage in this mess. And went back to the line of scrimmage, got ready for the next play. In years past, our guys would have pushed back and things would have escalated, and who knows, a 50-yard penalty put you behind the chains. So that's just an example, I think, of how this team's matured and how they see what the overall goal is. And so, yeah, it's a good place to be right now.
Yeah, it was fun to see them have that controlled emotion against Miami, and certainly not getting involved into any of the hijinks that might have been going on, particularly once the game got out of hand, which was early, 31-3 at the half. Listen, a lot of superlatives to go around on offense, defense, and special teams after FSU racks up 454 yards of offense, holds Miami to 188 total yards. We usually start with an individual performance, Mark, when we start reviewing the game. But, FSU rushed the ball 47 times for 229 yards and really went into the game thinking Miami might be able to defend the run. They've been doing a good job all season up until this point. Listen, it didn't matter whether Miami played 5 in the box or 8 in the box. They could not contain Florida State's run game. The counter gave Miami fits in this ball game. Just talk about this offensive line as it continues to grow and develop. I believe they're one of the top 25 rush offenses in America right now. I have to check that. But just talk about the offensive line. I had Dimitri Emmanuel's name written down. We saw Darius Washington at right tackle last night. And then, of course, 2 stories that we're probably not talking about enough. The job that Preston Daniel and Cam McDonald are doing in the run game. Just talk about the offensive line, who stood out, what you saw, and why Florida State was successful.
Yeah, kind of steal my thunder here a little bit. I want to park here a little bit. This is my favorite topic to talk about.
Yes,
these
I know.
guys up front, right? Wow, how far they've come, right? How far they've come from just 2 years ago. Matured and how transfers have come in and really solidified this offensive line. Scott at left tackle,
Yep.
solid game. His level of performance is really high right now. Dimitri Emmanuel is just a physical player. He really had a really good game. Handled Taylor all night long. Maurice Smith, center, just a smart player, savvy player. The things he does, the movement he has, you see subtle little things that he does that good players do. Really like him. And I'm gonna say something. Dylan Gibbons to me was the player of the game. Okay, Dylan Gibbons, man, his pulling on the traps was incredible. He was moving guys out of the way. He was locking on guys, running his feet, running to the echo of the whistle. The effort he put in, I haven't seen that kind of effort. It really collectively, I can say it for everybody last night, but the effort that especially he put in during the course of the game was tremendous. I watched the game again, and I just watched him in that middle 3, and man, it was fun to watch. I wish I had a grade sheet. I would have liked to have graded them. I would have just been pluses everywhere, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, Darius Washington started the game at right tackle, which was good because he's a lot more athletic than Turnentine. And as many counters as were running, man, he was coming around those corners, getting downfield, running interference, blocking guys. His mobility was really on point for the game plan that we had to run, the counters that we were running, and did a fine job. I mean, he's looks like be healthy now. So collectively, as a group, this group really played well, physical. Something I was been wanting to see out of this group for a while. And you mentioned it, the tight ends, Cam McDonald coming around on some of those pulls was really pouring in there, and he was looking for contact. That made me happy because a lot of times you get a tight end in those positions, and Preston Daniel and Marquez and Douglas, they were looking for contact coming around there on some of these pulls. Yep. And that's not a common thing along tight ends. Let me tell you, it's almost like their offensive linemen coming around there and making blocks, heads in the right places. We kept running it because Miami couldn't defend it. They weren't squeezing down on those trap blocks. They weren't filling gaps. They weren't wrong shouldering things. So guys could go, make them bounce it and linebackers run over the top, which is typically how you play those plays. So and as a result, we kept running it. And, I'm just really, and then you throw the wide receivers downfield. We only threw the ball 16 times, right? And so those guys, their work day was blocking. Yep. And man, they did a really good job. How many times do we see 14 just locked on a guy, right? All those guys were they had a good game blocking for the most part. So then you throw on top of that, I'm sure we'll talk about it, the running backs and the effort that they put.
That's where we're going next.
Well, that group, let me tell you something. that was something to see. And look, I know Miami isn't that's not Warren Sapp and Vince Wilfork and those guys that down there. That's not who we were playing against, and that's not Ray Lewis and those guys. That's not who they were. And
yeah, but I can make the argument that Maurice Smith is no Mark Salva.
Well, that's true too. He's much better. But be that as it may, I'm not apologizing for that, because just 2 years ago we were talking about how our offensive line is really struggling, and we don't know who our quarterback is, right? So things can change in a hurry. We know that. But you know what? Like I said, I'm not apologizing for it. We took advantage of it, and the result was a fun game.
Yeah.
Well, let me say this too. One more thing.
Okay.
The fact that we only threw the ball 16 times, and we ran the ball almost 50.
Yep, 47.
That is humiliating to a defense. I mean, yeah, you can say, well, because I'm going to tell you something. We could have thrown the ball. We could have thrown bombs. I mean, we hit the bomb on Pokey right at the bat. The one that got intercepted, if he would have laid it out a little more to the outside, to the middle of the field, probably had a chance to run under that one. It was just a poorly thrown ball on that pick. But I'm telling you, we could have gone deep a lot more and probably hit a lot of shots. And the fact that we didn't have to, but that's just one player, a quarterback making a good throw, one player beating a DB.
Yeah.
When you collectively run the ball and jam it down your throat, that's the whole offense manhandling the whole defense, and that is a lot more humiliating from a defensive standpoint to me.
Well, listen, there's a ton of complimentary football that was played in that game within offenses and defenses, and it was fun to see. And listen, but we'll move on to the running backs next, because I do want to talk about Trey Benson and Lawrence Toafili. But the development they've done at tight end with Preston Daniel and has been quite amazing. Listen, Preston's come a long way in the 3 walk on and becomes a bigger part of this offense each year he's here, and the later in the season he's gotten better. Same thing with Marquise and Douglas. And listen, that little tight end screen with the play action was kind of a neat play call as they drew eyes away from Markison and hit him for a big gain. That was a fun play call. But listen, Trey Benson, we've been wanting to see more of him. Sean Ward's missed the last 2 games with injury. Trey Benson has picked up and looks to be as healthy as he's been all season. 15 carries for 128 yards, 2 touchdowns, another reception for 25 yards. Just what he's doing for this offense. How impressed, and has he nailed that running back 1 position headed into the last 3 games of the year?
Yeah, that's a good question, because all 3 guys all bring something different to the table. Has one of them separated themselves? I guess that's the question. Has Trey Benson separated himself from the other 2? I don't think necessarily so. I think, for this game, for what we wanted to do this game, it was his day, right? And he pulled it through. Tonight was his night. And because honestly, Lawrence Toafili, LT, had a good game too. He brings you the out of the back, the receptions out of the backfield, where Benson gives you that physicality, breaking tackles, getting to the second level. And then you got Ward, where Benson will break the line of scrimmage and run through an arm tackle on the safety. Ward will make them miss. So, you get a team that has better tackling safeties. It might be a Treshaun Ward game where he's going to make that guy miss and make those big runs, right? So it just kind of depends what we need on the night, on who tonight may be. But to your point, though, Benson, man, what a physical runner. I said last night, it was almost shades of Greg Jones, right? Just a physical big body that, runs through arm tackles, and guys start turning it down late in the game. And it's a good thing to see. And the effort he put in, man, that almost touchdown he had, that encapsulates the night right there. Offensive line kept pushing, and he kept fighting, and just about got the ball in the end zone there. They called it on the 1. Right. But that just to me, that just encapsulates the night on the team win right there.
Yeah, and listen, then you talk. Lawrence Toafili probably gets talked less than anybody about from the skill positions. But again, he had well over 100 yards from this line of scrimmage, both receiving and rushing. He's kind of turned into a silent assassin, right? I mean, he's the second guy in at the running back, second or third guy in at the running back position. Then spend some time in the slot. He's a guy that defenses are trying to learn how to defend. Just talk a little bit about his continued development as he continues to impress.
is dependability, right? And when LT comes in the game, I don't bat an eye. Good. That means, something big can happen with him in the game. I don't feel like we're losing anything when he gets in the game. And that's a great compliment to him. It's a great compliment to really the whole running back room, that these guys are interchangeable and gives us options, so many different options. I mean, that reception on that wheel route he made, I mean, that was a pretty good catch and run after the catch. He almost broke it, right? And so, I mean, and he seems to do that. He does that pretty consistently. So, one time might be an accident, second time it's a habit. So that's a habit I like to indulge in a little bit more. But I love the guy. I mean, and he runs in between the tackles too. I mean, he was pouring it up in there, and he had the same kind of effort runs that you saw Trey have, right? So there's not any drop off in my eyes. It's just a different kind of style.
Oh, I agree totally. I agree totally.
Yeah.
Listen, he's fun to watch, and I say keep running the real route until Florida State can find a defensive coordinator that will not try to cover him with a defensive tackle or defensive end. It's the second week in a row we've seen him run that same play or a similar type play where he is hitting the wheel route out of the backfield or out of the slot. Oh, well, actually out of the backfield, and they've hit. Last week, they tried to cover him with the defensive end at Georgia Tech, and this weekend they tried to cover him with the end at Miami. That's not going to work. So I hope Syracuse and Louisiana and Florida will continue to try to defend that play that way. Listen, go ahead.
Well, I know you're going to talk about probably Travis next, right? And so
that's right.
And I want to start with that play, because that play on a lot of levels was such a huge play, and it really just kind of shows a lot of different things. Number one, it shows the design of our offense. So they brought 6 guys, I think. They might have brought 5, and not even the right 5. But the bottom line was he had a free runner. When they bring that blitz, they're thinking the back is going to block that guy. Told Philly had a free release on that play. In other words, he didn't have any blocking responsibility. And Travis, and he knew if that guy came, that he was the guy that was. I don't know if he's key blitzing being that if that back blocks, he rushes, but he was coming all the way. But I think what defense coordinator's banking on is that the back is going to block that guy, but he had a free release, which meant we had 5 blockers, and Travis knew that as soon as he got clear of the line of scrimmage, if he could hold the ball and deliver the ball, he was going to take a hit, and that was going to be a big play because nobody's covering that guy. And really, when you drop a defensive end on a back like that, you're kind of hedging your bets that situation is not going to happen. Right. That's just giving it lip service, saying, well, we'll try to cover him here, but that probably won't happen. Well, you're right. It's happened twice in a row. And we've, through film study of the coaching staff, understanding the situation and knowing the design of their blitzes, we've hit it twice in 2 weeks. And that's compliment to the coaching staff. That's a compliment to Lawrence for executing the play. And that's a compliment for Travis, knowing that guy was a free runner, that if he held on the ball and delivered the ball, it was wide open. And that's why you like when people blitz, when you have stuff like that in your package.
Yeah. Well, listen, Florida State got untracked with the passing game when it hit when Jordan Travis hit Pookie Wilson for a 56-yard touchdown pass to get the first score. But Jordan Travis only threw the ball 12 times, completed 12 of them for 202 yards and 3 touchdowns. Listen, the passing game was complimentary is not the right word, but it was not the focus of the offense. It was more complimentary in nature, despite the fact that he had 3 touchdowns. And listen, Johnny Wilson only had 2 catches, but one of them was a huge third down catch to keep a drive going. So that's what I mean by complimentary in nature. But just talk about Jordan in this game and the passing game in particular, where not a lot of catches to go around. I think Toafili led the team in receiving for the second week in a row. Not a lot out on the perimeter for Pittman and Wilson and the rest of the gang, but just talk a little bit about the passing game in this game.
Yeah, obviously we didn't need it. And that obviously indicative of the amount of passes we had and the amount of runs that we had. But you're right, it was timely and it was executed well. When it comes to Jordan Travis, we talked about the pick already. About Travis, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, I think we said after the BC game, he's mastered the offense. And I think what kind of goes underappreciated and kind of thing we've kind of lost sight of, we haven't had very many, if any, I know we didn't last night, have any pre-snap penalties. I mean, remember the times we'd have guys running around, not set yet, ball being snapped or mishandled, ball handling, fakes, rides, pitches, whatever. We haven't seen that, right? And
Right.
so that's Jordan's maturity and understanding. Because look, man, we're bringing in personnel groups. We're lining up different ways. We switch hashes, and now we're flipping receivers this way. We're motioning back that way. I mean, that's we were early on when this offense was first instituted. We were getting a lot of pre-snap penalties. Guys weren't getting set. Guys weren't lined up right. Guys were shuffling around, and Jordan would signal for the snap, and boom, we get a procedure penalty, right? We're not seeing that. We used to see ball handling, fumbles and drops and mishandles and all that. We're not seeing that. Ball handling is smooth, and look, that takes lots of practice. It takes understanding exactly what everybody's doing and where bodies are flying around and all that kind of thing. People think it's just, oh, you just ride it. No, it's not that. It's not as easy as they make it look. I promise you. So again, master the offense, understanding what we're trying to do, what's being asked of him, and executing. And look, like I said, I think we could have thrown bombs if we need to. We could have thrown bombs. I mean, they obviously have a problem covering the deep ball.
Yes, they do.
And I think if we wanted to, we probably could have taken a few shots and probably hit on a lot of them, but that wasn't the way to go. And like I said earlier, it's more humiliating to jam down your throat anyways.
It is. And of course, what may have been even more humiliating than what FSU's offense did to Miami's defense might have been what FSU's defense did to Miami's offense, which was limit them to 62 yards through the air and 188 yards for the game. Miami ran just 52 plays, Mark, and had 7 drives of 3 plays or less, a drive of 2 plays, and really only 2 drives of over 6 plays. It was pure dominance by Florida State's defense. Got a lot of contributors. Jamie Robinson had a big game. Tatum Bethune didn't play a ton, but he had a huge stop on 3rd and 1 in the second quarter that would have sustained a Miami drive. I think that was one of their 6-play drives. Not positive on that, but anyway, it stopped that drive. Miami took over. Florida State took over, I believe, scored a touchdown. But just talk about FSU's dominance on defense for the second week in a row, particularly against an offense that was coming in with some pretty heady numbers in the passing game, but just never looked efficient or productive at all.
Well, they have their own problems, and I heard Mark Richt say this, and I said it before I heard him say it, but, Van Dyke wasn't ready to play. And the fact that they were trying to get him ready and knowing he was taking practice reps away from the other guys probably hurt them because he obviously didn't even last a quarter and a half.
Yep.
And so, now you're ill prepared. These other guys are ill prepared in the game plan because he was probably taking a lot of those reps or, a good amount of them. They could have taken more of this. So that kind of made it easy for us because now focus on the run because obviously he couldn't drive the ball downfield. That became evident really early. And what really raised my eyebrows was I think it was their first drive. The drive they got the field.
Yep, that's the first drive of the game.
Yeah, they brought Jacurri in the game. They brought him in the game and threw a deep ball. Right up until then, Van Dyke threw a couple screens, a couple check downs, a couple little 8 to 10 yard passes. But when they wanted to throw a deep ball, they brought in Jacurri Brown, and he threw a deep ball, was incomplete, overthrew everything. Right. So that raised my eyebrow going, he can't throw the ball down the field. And we need to make sure our safeties are running up and screaming in there. And they were. And I think after that, I think defense, our guys probably saw the same thing, I'm sure. And, that enabled us. But let me tell you something. The reason the defense really dominated was that the middle of the defense, Fabian Lovett, and look, Fabian Lovett and Robert Cooper, Farmer,
Malcolm Ray,
Jackson, Malcolm Ray, all those guys, Briggs, right?
Yep.
And then the middle two, the linebacker and the safeties down the middle were just stout. They couldn't get anything going. And when you're stout down the middle, it makes things so much easier, so much easier. And so because the middle of the defense was so dominant, and again, credit to the defensive staff, they were dialed in on everything Miami wanted to do. Situationally, right?
Yep.
I mean, everything was kind of covered. The one time Brown, got that ball to Restrepo, there were guys around him. He just threw it high. Guy made a play. I mean, they're going to make a play. Everybody's going to make a play every now and then, right? But there were guys around there. And then the Greedy Vance's interception was a great.
Oh, did you watch the replay? I mean, what a play by that kid.
I did. I mean, they played it perfectly, right? So, they recognized formationally what they wanted to do and where his responsibility was, and jammed, redirected the receiver, ran underneath the under route, and boom, he was there for the pick, right? So that's just what you want to see. So again, I'm not going to apologize for Miami's problems. Obviously, they had offensive line problems, they had quarterback problems. And top it all off, they don't give you a lot of problems on offense. They don't present a lot of issues. They're pretty vanilla, right?
Yeah.
And that makes it easier too. So that's 2 weeks in a row we've gone against not very good offensive lines and poor quarterback play, and we've been able to take advantage of it. So I'm not apologizing for it. We did what we had to do. Defense came to play, but the attitude and effort was on point. I don't care if they had a healthy Tyler Van Dyke. I don't care if they had a healthy offensive line. That was going to be a hard day for them because our guys were dialed in and they were playing hard.
Yeah, I totally agree with you on the Van Dyke thing. That was going to be one of my questions for you. Would that have made a difference that he played the whole game? And I don't think so. I mean, they were not very good with him in the ball game, and obviously we're not going to be as good with him out. But I don't think he was going to make that much of a difference. And listen, we continue to see we saw more snaps from DJ Lundy in this game probably than we have in a long time. He played really well. Deloach looked good. Of course, Patrick Payton, man, I can't wait to see him get another off season in the weight room and in conditioning, because he is just all over the place. As you mentioned, the turnovers were back. The Vance interception was an unbelievable play when you watch it on the replay. Verse just seems to fall into plays. Miami came out with that long drive in the start of the third quarter, which seems to be a thing. But anyway, they snapped the ball. He ends up picking it up right around the 35-yard line. I believe Florida State scored on that drive as well. So the 4 turnovers turned into 14 points, and obviously in a game like that, it was going to be, Miami had no chance with the offense and defense playing like it was. Now, listen, the Osceola staff, when we sit around and talk, we talk about the fact that this defense is better, both from a production standpoint and an energy standpoint, when Lovett, Verse, Bethune, and Robinson are healthy and playing, whether they're all 4 on the field at the same time or not. It does seem to help when they're all 4 on the field at the same time or not. But those guys were on the field a lot, probably for the most amount of snaps since LSU, is when Lovett left missed about 7 games with injury. Just talk about what do you think the potential of this defense is with those 4 being healthy now, and with getting some more contributions from Greedy Vance and Gaynor and Coach and McClendon and all the rest of the guys on defense. What do you see this defense performing? Listen, they held Miami to 3 points, which is the lowest points in a game that Adam Fuller defense has held an opponent to since they've been here. But what do you think the top end for this defense is, and now what will be 3 and now a 4th game with the bowl coming up? We're going to get to that in a second.
What's the top end? That's a good question. You just made my point for me about the middle 3. With when you throw in Jamie Robinson and Bethune and Lovett, that makes your middle stronger, and then you get Versus playmaking ability on the outside. But look, the emergence of Patrick Payton is a huge factor for this defense. Again, it enables Dennis Briggs to be able to go down inside and play inside. So now what do you have? You have rotation in the middle, where those guys just work so hard and get so tired and get banged up, right? I mean, we mentioned before, you got Jackson, Ray, you got Farmer, Briggs, Lovett, Cooper. That's a pretty good defensive tackle rotation.
Yep.
And when we need to have our best in the tightest moments, they're going to be in a better shape to be able to impact the game. And that's huge. Same thing with the linebackers. Bethune, Lundy, Gaynor, 4. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name.
Deloach.
Deloach, yeah. Deloach. Okay, now you've got 4 linebackers, not quite the same depth, and there's a little bit more of a drop off between Deloach and Bethune when you go to Lundy and Gaynor. But all that being said, still pretty getting And then, you've got Omarion Cooper looks like he's getting back healthier, right? You've got one of our favorite, Shaheem Brown, seems to be playing a lot more snaps and is really good coming into the box and blitzing and doing his run fits. So backing up Jamie Robinson, it looks like, able to arrest him during the course of the game. So look, the secret to good top end defense is being able to sub guys and being able to keep guys fresh in and not drop off. There was a little bit of a drop off when they made their run, right? When they got down to the goal line and they started on the 1 yard line, they broke that big run, and that was with the backups in there. But what I did like is that they kept them in there, made them play through it until they got down to the goal line. Then we brought in some of the first team guys. Yeah. But and I like that, because the immediate response would be get them out of the game, get the first team in there. That's BS. No, make them play through it, and that's how players learn from experience. Mike was talking about in his press conference. You see you build on your experiences, and you see these things starting to show up, and you learn. This game was the culmination of a lot of learning that's happened over the last 3 years, right? And so, the question is, what's the top end of this defense? It's pretty high for who we're going to continue to play. Can we play, at a national championship caliber? Are we Clemson? I don't think we're that, right?
Well, Clemson's not even
Clemson. Bad example. Are we Georgia? Right?
No.
Are we Georgia? No, we're not Georgia. Not yet, right? And that's the personnel thing. That's elite personnel at every position. We have elite personnel in some positions, and we have really good college football players in the rest. So we can be a pretty good defense.
Yeah, well, listen, it was a complete game, and the special teams was just as every bit as important in this game as was the offense and defense. And Alex Mastromano was the maestro of kicking on Saturday night. 3 kicks, all pinned Miami inside their own 20-yard line, including 2 that pinned Miami inside the 5-yard line. And, of course, set up a situation where Miami was forced. The defense forced a 3 and out. FSU got a short field, was able to score off that short field. So, and then Ryan Fitzpatrick kicked a field goal at the end of regulation to really put the dagger in Miami, which, might have thought they had a chance at 28-3. But once they went down by 4 full scores, listen, the writing was on the wall. This game was over at halftime, whether people want to admit that or not. Florida State was in total command. But just talk a little bit about Alex Mastromano and Ryan Fitzpatrick in this ball game.
Well, your favorite phrase, complimentary football, flipping the field, pinning guys back, getting points after taking a bad sack, those are things that winning football teams do, plain and simple. And you don't ask a lot for those guys until you ask a lot from them, right? And that's a big part of the game. It is. And so able to execute on the punts, that was good to see. And Fitzy now has made a couple in a row, and confidence is getting better. And at some point, he's going to have to make a big kick. So the more of that we can get, the better.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. And listen, one last question before we go to break on the game itself, and we move into bowl eligibility and come from. But listen, we saw a lot third and fourth quarter. Just your overall thoughts. I was very impressed that they were able to shut Miami down, even though they didn't have their top tier guys in there. And obviously, offense was good, no matter who was in the ball game. But just talk a little bit about anybody that stood out to you of the young guys.
Well, I love that when the backups were in on offense, that they were able to finish a drive and score. Converting a 4th down throw. And then, running the ball effectively, continuing to run the ball effectively with the young guys in there. To Armella, Julian Armella, and just seeing the potential that he has and wanting to see how he's progressing and continues to progress, because at some point Robert Scott's going to make the leap and it's going to be his. And so obviously I want to see how that is. and it looks like he's progressing well. He's got a natural nasty streak that I don't think Robert has. You know, you see him trying to finish blocks. You see him really getting after guys, and he takes great pride in finishing and his effort. So, you know, that's something. You know, what is it? What's the saying? It's if a puppy don't bite, he's not going to bite as a dog, right?
That's right. That's one of your favorite sayings.
Yeah, that puppy bites, and that's something you don't have to teach. So you know, I like that about him, and the other young guys too, Estes and Schrader. You know, they're you know, making progress too, and you know, like I said, that whole offensive line was young guys. I think it was Lloyd Willis, the other tackle.
Yeah,
was it Lloyd? Yeah, Lloyd was the other tackle, and 64. So those guys finished the drive and ran the ball in, and 22 making some hard runs. 22 reminds me of Felix Harris. You remember Felix Harris?
Yeah,
back in the 90s.
Felix the Cat.
Felix the Cat. Felix would get a lot of garbage. Would get garbage time, but Felix also ran 4.3 and was a hard runner. He was one of our kickoff returners, right?
Yes, he was.
And so, you know, the joke was, you know, the first team would get everybody tired out. You put Felix in the game, and his 4.3 would break it, and he's scoring three touchdowns at the end of the game. You know, that's kind of what you got there. Help me with his name. 22.
Ja'Kai?
No.
Oh, CJ Campbell.
CJ Campbell. I should know that. My apologies, CJ. But yeah, that's kind of what it reminds me of, you know. And you know, one day it'll be his, and but it's good to see those guys get some good quality reps.
Yeah. Well, listen, it was an unbelievably impressive win by Florida State to get to 6-3, and again, blow out Alumni Hall. We'll be back in 30 seconds to talk about the importance of FSU being bowl eligible and how that may affect them on the recruiting trail. And we'll take a closer look, or an early look, at Syracuse. We'll be back in 30 seconds.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store. Alumni Hall.
All right, we are back with the FSU versus Miami edition of Seminole Sidelines. And, of course, I am Pat Burnham, and joined, as always, by former FSU offensive lineman and Osceola football analyst Mark Salva. Mark, FSU now ranked 25th in an AP poll, now 6-3 and bowl eligible. First of all, from your perspective, going back to your time as a player and even as a coach, how good must it feel as a player and coach to become bowl eligible versus one of your arch rivals in a game where you completely dominated and destroyed them?
Oh, it's the best, right? I mean, you know, for a lot of reasons, you know, you want to be humble, but then again, not really, right?
Not with these guys.
Not with these guys, right? But you know, think about it. Think about the beginning of the year when we did this show preseason, and we were all saying if we won 7 and went to a bowl game, it would be a great season.
It was progress.
And here we are at 6, bowl in pocket, 3 games left to play that we're probably going to be favored in. And how far we've come. And oh, by the way, think about how low they've gone, right? They started the year with high expectations.
Oh, in the top 15, yes.
In the top 15.
Tyler Van Dyke, player of the year in ACC preseason.
Yeah, preseason player of the year. You know, Mario superstar staff, all that stuff. I mean, I got a lot of different thoughts on all that. But all that being said,
yeah, here's all I'm going to say about
there.
Here's what I'm going to say about the superstar staff. You see all these NBA teams trying to put together superstar rosters, and you see what happens with the Nets and the Lakers, and that's listen. That's my analogy to the superstar staff down in Miami. And listen, there's some guys I have a lot of respect for, but
sure.
Listen, yeah,
of course you do, but you know, there's the saying, there's too many chiefs and not enough Indians, or too many cooks in the kitchen. There's a reason that's a cliche, right? You got all these ex-head coaches, inspiring head coaches around who's doing the grunt work, you know. So yeah, that's so yeah. When you think back to just a few months ago and where we are now, you just can't help being with pride about how, because look, here's the deal. There's no shortcuts to get here, right? It was a hard, grinding road, and we're starting to see the fruits of all that effort. And to be rewarded with the prospective bowl game with 3 games left to go is a huge accomplishment for this program, for this team. And it's one to be celebrated. For us, they need to keep working, but we can celebrate it for sure.
Yes, we can. We can celebrate and we can project out another 3 and 4 weeks. But listen, FSU did go through a 3-game losing stretch. You hear people, fans start to mumble and rumble a little bit about unhappy with the players and the coaching staff. We certainly have never done that. We were critical where we needed to be, but certainly, we always thought the program was heading the right direction despite those 3 games. But how big was this for Mike Norvell as he continues to try to rebuild this program and take it back to a place of national prominence?
Well, it's huge. Everyone is huge, but this one in particular because it goes to his credibility within the state. It goes to his credibility in terms of the things that he's saying, even behind closed doors, but also publicly. About his plan, his vision, and doing that to the fan base, to the supporters, the boosters, doing it to prospective student athletes. It gives them credibility, and it also enhances the culture because there's nothing more disheartening than working your tail off and not getting a result and wondering if the result's ever going to come. And now you're starting to see some results and the benefit of all that hard work. Because he said it many times. I've said it my whole career. Hard work doesn't guarantee you wins, but it does guarantee you a chance to win, right? There's a huge difference. And, the fact that the hard work is paying off, it just gives you so much more credibility, and it enables you as a coaching staff to even go and demand more from these guys, and these guys receiving it and understanding that it's coming from a place where they're trying to make me better, and that I'll be a better player if I just follow through with it. And it's huge all the way around.
Yeah, obviously these games have a tendency and can have an impact on the recruiting trail. Florida State is locked in battles with Miami and Florida, obviously, with recruits in the 2023 and 2024 classes and beyond. Right now, FSU and UCF are the only 2, and I'm using Power 5 with UCF loosely because they're going into the Big 12 here shortly. But they're the only 2 teams that are bowl eligible. Miami and Florida State are recruiting a defensive tackle out of Miami Central, I believe, Reuben Bain, and a cornerback out of American Heritage, Damari Brown. They're kind of like locked in a tight battle for those guys. There's some other people involved with Damari and with Reuben both. But just how will Mike and his staff utilize this or leverage this on the recruiting trail over the next week and into the early signing period in December? And obviously there's more games to play, but this game in particular.
Well, this was critical for a lot of reasons, not the least of which is, Mike and his staff, they're on year 3, and, Mario and Billy Napier, they're on year 1. So they, as far as recruiting goes, they've got a little bit of a pass, kind of like we did when Mike first came, right? You got a little bit of a pass saying, well, if we were all great and stuff, I wouldn't be here, and so, yeah, the results aren't great, but we're just starting to build something. Whereas in year 3, you've had 2 years to build and 2 years to demonstrate results, and you better start showing them because then it starts falling on deaf ears. So the fact that we got a result, we got an overwhelming result, and the fact that we are where we are and the position that we're in gives them credibility when they get in front of parents, get in front of coaches, get in front of prospects. And you know what? You got to strike while the iron's hot. And I have no doubt that's exactly what's happening as we speak.
Yeah, I would imagine that the recruiting office was busy today putting out a number of messages, graphics to a bunch of recruits. And listen, Well deserved by Florida State because they did dominate Miami. All right, so Mark, FSU has locked up a bowl spot for the first time since 2019. We both feel that where they are now and who they're getting ready to go play, they have a real shot at 9-3. It's not unrealistic at this point to think that they got a shot at 9-3. Now, listen, I don't think Syracuse and Florida are givens. I know some people do. I do not. Those teams have played well at times this season. But listen, can Mike use getting to 9-3 as a motivating factor, because the difference in a bowl game could be San Diego and Orlando at 9-3 versus a Charlotte or New York City at 7-5, 8-4. Will today's generation respond to that? Will coaches use that? Hey, let's go to the best bowl possible type of thing.
I don't know. I think that's a dangerous thing to do, to use that as a motivation, because look, as cliched as it is true. Your most important game is the next game.
That's right.
You can't start looking ahead and start wondering about all that stuff. You take care of business today, and all that stuff will work itself out. You beat Syracuse. You do what it takes today to beat Syracuse on Saturday, and that's your sole focus, right? You start putting this other stuff out there, you're running the risk of getting distracted and taking the eye off the ball. And as a coach, I wouldn't want that to happen.
Well, let me ask you this. Would that motivate you as a player on this football team? Because they watch television. They understand what bowls are associated with the conference. Would that have motivated you as a player when you played at Florida State? Maybe I asked the question the wrong way.
Well, of course. Yeah. As a player, you want to play on the biggest stages. And of course, that's a factor. I mean, going to New Year's Day Bowl is a huge deal. It still is. Going to one of the big bowls. So yeah, as a player, that definitely is. Because I mean, I remember in '86, that was my junior year. We went to the All-American Bowl, which was in Birmingham, Alabama.
Yes, I remember that.
We remember that one. That was when Coach Bowden was getting courted by the University of Alabama.
That's right.
I remember as a team, we were like, we'd rather not. It was almost a demotivator, because it was cold. It was Birmingham.
Was awful. Do you remember them serving the broth on the sidelines instead of water?
Oh gosh, yes,
that hot chicken broth is what they served on the sideline.
Yeah, it was practice every day but we saw that coming. That was. And I remember when we'd be in flex during practice at that bowl game, we'd all be going, "This is our reward."
Hey, I didn't mind it.
This is a reward. Just remember that.
I was 16 and got to drive to Birmingham in my own car, so I appreciate y'all. But that was my first away trip on my own. So
the other side of that was there wasn't any pressure, and we had a lot of fun that week for sure.
And that ended up being a really good game against Indiana.
Yeah, it was a good game, and it was a lot of fun during the week because coaches were whatever, all that was going on with Coach Bowden too, and so I remember there was a lot of tomfoolery through the week. And
I am sure there were some trips to Sammy's involved.
there was my memory's
kind of
fading, but
you're pleading the fifth. That's okay.
I can't quite remember.
But, yeah. The only reason I know about it is because I went to Sanford, and that's where my host on my first official visit, Jimbo Fisher, took me.
There you go.
So, all right, listen, let's move forward to Syracuse. Let's take an early look at them. Obviously, we'll have more coverage on Syracuse as we get into the week on the Osceola at FloridaState.Rivals.com, theosceola.com. But the Orange are 6-3, and were one of the stories of the ACC at the midway point of the season, where they were 6-0. It was a big year, is a big year for their head coach Dino Babers. He brought in Robert Anai from Virginia as offensive coordinator, who had been with Bronco Mendenhall at Virginia. The fortunes of this team around. Last three games, we talked a little bit about earlier last night on First Impressions about how stats can be misrepresented, and we've seen it multiple times this season. But their wins come over Louisville, UConn, Purdue, Virginia, Wagner, and North Carolina State. And losses, last three, Clemson, Notre Dame, and last night the Pitt 19-9. Obviously we're both going to study them a little bit further later in the week and for our preview. But just your overall thoughts on what you know about Syracuse at this point.
Well, Syracuse is a dangerous team. Now, these last 2 weeks, we've played teams that were playing with one hand tied behind their back for the most part, with quarterback issues, with poor offensive lines, and defenses weren't all cracked up with, what the stats showed. I think this is a little different situation. Number one, we're going to Syracuse, and that's never easy. It's a long trip. It's a night game, so it's going to be, who knows what the weather's going to be like. Even though it doesn't matter, it's in the dome. But still, it's just different surroundings, right?
It's a different place to play. I mean, it's a unique place to play.
It is, and I don't think any of these guys have they been up there. I guess
no, I don't think so. I don't think Mike's played Syracuse up there yet. I could be wrong. I think they did the first year. I think they did two years ago.
The COVID year?
No, you're right. They didn't. No, yeah. So let's just go ahead and assume this is their first time up there for most of these kids.
So we'll be that as it may. My point is, it's I don't want to use the term trap game because I don't think we're looking past them for Louisiana, right? I think, or maybe even a hangover game.
Yeah. Well, that was my question. Are you concerned at all about? I'm not worried about them having looking past Louisiana or looking to Louisiana or Florida, but the hangover from this game, they're going to get. Listen, we have not mentioned one negative thing on this podcast, on this television show, and they're not going to hear a negative thing all week, right? I mean, they are the kings of this campus for the next 7 days, and they're going to be patted on the back a lot. Are you worried about a hangover effect? And listen, my opinion is we've seen very little evidence to think that one of Mike's teams would do that, but since he's been here,
I think it's only natural. I mean, when you build up to peak, and I know what I said earlier about peaking, but when you're building to a crescendo to have a great performance like they did, you worry about the hangover when you got the result you had. I mean, it's just human nature. So how can we overcome that? Are we mature enough to overcome that? That's going to be the question. And we'll know Saturday at 6:30, 8, whatever.
Yep.
I'm Central Time, but
8 p.m. kickoff on ACC.
So 7 my time, right? So we'll know then if there's a hangover or not, because they are a dangerous team. They had a good run early in the season, had a lot of confidence, ran into some issues. Now they got a little bit of back health.
Yeah.
So we'll dig more into that during the week and see what for a third week in a row we're dealing with is he going to play or not, right? So,
you're right. And what Mark is referring to is Garrett Schrader, Syracuse's starting quarterback. Obviously limited them against a good Pitt defense. Now, who they are going to have to play against is Sean Tucker, one of the best running backs in the ACC, if not the nation, 34th in the country in yards gained with 777. Listen, they have a really good pass defense, giving up 141 yards a game on the ground, 15th in total defense in the nation. So we're going to get to see if Florida State can continue its trend of running through good defenses, which they've done to this point in the season, with the exception again of NC State, particularly in the second half. But listen, they've been really good against versus the pass. They're 5th, 6th in the nation in pass defense, and offense they're right around the middle of the pack. So, like Mark said, we will have more coverage on Syracuse as the week goes on, including Aria, Roberto Aguayo, and Kurt Weiler will be back next week or Monday or Tuesday with First and Knoll. I will have Knoll Your Enemy, and of course Bob and Kurt will have daily practice coverage from Florida State. They'll have cover Mike's press conference on Monday. You can come back to the Osceola for that. Obviously, daily practice coverage from Kurt and Bob on Tuesday and Wednesday. We will have the Osceola tailgate with myself, Mark, Charles Fishbein, and JP Peterson on Thursday. And then, of course, Fish and I are going to try to fit in a Reeling Them In on Wednesday or Thursday of this week to catch up on the latest on the recruiting front. But, Mark, as always, I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to join us. As we've said, these things are getting funner and funner to do. We sat through 3 not-so-fun seasons on Sundays doing these Seminole Sidelines, and it's always fun when you get to celebrate a Miami victory, 45-3 over the Hurricanes on Saturday night, and a Hard Rock Stadium that they need to. I think it officially needs to be Seminole Hard Rock Stadium, and it may be, but it certainly was. It certainly was Saturday night. And listen, FSU 6-3 will probably be favored going into the Syracuse game on the road, and has 3 winnable games left in the season. And we'll be here to cover them. We'll be back next week after the game on First Impressions. Mark and I will be on YouTube, Osceola Twitter, Osceola Facebook, about 10 minutes after the Syracuse game ends. You can catch us live, and then we'll be back here next Sunday night at 6 p.m. for another Seminole Sidelines. Mark, thanks for joining us, and as always, we're going to let you sign us off.
Hey, baby, go Noles.
Alumni Hall, where you'll find officially licensed FSU gear for the entire family, including brands like Nike and Champion, plus great gifts for your favorite Seminole and home decor too. Miss some of the old Seminole throwback logos? Check out our College Vault collection. Shop online at alumnihall.com and let our great customer sales team ship to you within days, or pick up in store in Tallahassee. You'll find us in the Miracle Plaza Shopping Center on Thomasville Road. Students and military get 10% off in store. Alumni Hall. Hey Seminole fans, tickets to Florida State football games are now on sale. Right now, you can pick up single game tickets, 3-game packs, and season tickets for the 2022 season. Home games include Florida, Clemson, Georgia Tech, Wake Forest, Boston College, Louisiana, and Duquesne. Have fun this football season with your friends and family, all the while knowing your ticket purchase is funding FSU's success. Call your ticket rep today at 800-644-1830 or visit Seminoles.com. That's Seminoles.com.